U.S. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue told Fox News Business up to 1 million calves have been killed in Iowa and Nebraska alone after historic flooding devastated the Midwest. According to officials, the Missouri River is expected to crest today, swelling the river's waters to its third highest level in history. The damage is particularly devastating for farmers whose farm and ranch losses are expected to be in the billions.
Roger Johnson is the president of the National Farmers Union, and he joins us now from Washington. Sir, thanks so much for being with us.
You're very welcome. Good to be with you.
So the flooding, sir, has been devastating to many communities in the Midwest. We've been reporting all week long, especially farmers. Tell us about the impact this has had, and what are you hearing from farmers on the ground?
Yeah. Well, the impact is really pretty dramatic. It's important for folks to understand that agriculture has been under a lot of stress even before this weather pattern set in. Net farm income is about half of what it was 5 years ago. The trade deals that are coming out of this administration, the tariffs, all that is depressing prices, making things tougher. And then you had this sort of bomb cyclone that hit, which caught a lot of folks sort of unawares, killed a lot of animals, and then, of course, that's followed by all this thawing and flooding. You know, I've been talking to members all over the Midwestern part of the country in the last week or so, and it's just dramatic. I mean, some folks are clearly going to lose their business. They've lost their houses. They've lost their farmsteads. They lost a lot of animals. A lot of these folks are expecting that they're not going to be able to plant this year because by the time the floodwaters recede, it'll just be too late.
You know, I think about this and the fact that, you know, Vlad, if somebody said to us, listen, for the next 6 or 7 months, 8 months, there's no income coming in. I mean, they're looking forward to not getting paid for maybe a year, maybe more. I mean, how do farmers cope? What are some of the farmers telling you about their plans for the future?
Well, there are a lot of different things that need to be done. I mean, farmers are kind of a unique breed. I spent most of my life as a farmer in North Dakota and raised cattle and calves, and so I kind of understand this business. We're an independent lot. We take care of ourselves. We plan a year or 2 or 5 or 10 down the road. We don't get a monthly paycheck. Most of us end up getting an annual paycheck. It's when you sell your crops or when you sell your livestock at the end of the year, that's when you get paid. So it takes a little while for some of this to play out. But what happens immediately is this is the time of the year when farmers are most cash flow stressed. Their crop came in last year. They are in the middle of incurring a lot of expenses. If they're a cattle producer or other livestock producer, they've got a lot of baby calves being born right now. And so that's really stressful for those animals. A lot of them lost. I mean, one of the things that happens when you lose animals in this sort of an environment is you may lose the calves to flooding or you lose the mama cows to flooding, but you hardly ever lose the same pair. So you have a baby calf that's died, and the mother for that calf now doesn't have a calf, but then another mother is dead, and you can't just put those remaining pairs together. You're going to have extended diseases. You know, just like we get sick if we're out in this sort of an environment, cattle, all kinds of livestock are going to get sick as a result of these temperature changes, standing in water, and that illness is going to be something that's going to carry with them for a long time. So there's a lot of services that need to be provided: mental health services, mediation services. Folks need help talking to lenders, getting their affairs in order. Everything is sort of upside down right now for a lot of these folks. They don't have a house to live in. I mean, there's just an enormous amount of stress. What's good about the community is people do tend to come together and help one another, and we're hoping that that's what's going to save us.
Mr. Johnson, you point out that farmers do come together and help each other out. I'd also like to think that we as Americans would want to do the same thing for folks in that region, in that part of the country who are suffering. And I'm thinking, the reason I think about that is because if you live on the East Coast and the West Coast, down south, you may not realize as you look at these devastating pictures and you say to yourself, wow, that's terrible, and then you go on with your life, that the produce and the livestock and the things that you're growing there in the Midwest will affect what happens to us, for example, here in New York City. And that could drive prices up. And, you know, that could make life very difficult for people just beyond the part of the country that we're talking about. So how does the loss of produce and livestock from this region impact the rest of the country?
Well, it's, you know, there will be a modest impact, more than likely. $1 billion of loss is a lot of loss for the ag industry to suffer through. But in terms of our food supply, we produce more food in this country than what we need. So folks are still going to they're going to be able to go to the grocery store and they're going to be able to buy their groceries. What the challenge that happens here is it's an income story as much as it is a loss of food, because we produce a lot of food and we've got a surplus of food that's been produced in this country. But if folks don't have money, they can't buy food. And the real tragedy is a lot of these farmers and ranchers that are losing their livelihoods. I mean, these are the folks that put food on our table, and they don't have enough money to buy food for their own families. So it really is a case where we do all need to pull together as Americans, as you indicated.
Yeah, Roger, you really have done an excellent job describing the hardship that many of these farmers are going to endure. You mentioned mental health, and one of our correspondents who's been working down there talked about the fact that there has been a rising rate in suicides among farmers because of some of the pressures and challenges that you highlighted earlier on before Mother Nature wreaked havoc.
Yeah, well, that's very true. You know, farming is a stressful business, and when you have we've had 5 years in a row of ever declining net farm income, of prices that got lower and lower, in large part because we're simply producing too much. A little bit too much of production on the market drives the market very low, the price that farmers receive for what they sell. A little bit of shortage drives the market very high. The U.S. used to have farm programs that incented farmers to moderate that production so you could keep prices in more of a sweet spot, if you will. Those tools have largely been done away with under farm policy, and so now we're likely to continue to see these wilder swings. And with these wilder swings, you're likely to see longer periods of time with very low prices. That leads to a lot of mental anguish. It leads to a lot of financial stress. It leads to increases in suicides, as you've indicated. And so we run a number of mental health hotlines around the country to help farmers make sure that they know, listen, there's nothing so bad that you need to kill yourself. But it's hard for farmers in the middle of this to sort of see that. And so we need to surround them and help them and make them understand that.
Indeed.
Roger Johnson, thank you so much for spending some time with us and really highlighting and bringing home the devastation that is affecting our nation's farmers. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.